Good afternoon. I'm Jada Sandhu, and this is Chapman News, the podcast, for Friday, May 8th, 2020. We're glad you could join us. Let's get started with the day's major headlines. The big news today is the economy. The Labor Department says that the economy lost 20.5 million jobs in April, sending the unemployment rate to 14.7%. We haven't seen figures like that since the Great Depression in the 1930s. We'll have more on the economy, plus the president's reaction a bit later with Jared Brosnan. The number of coronavirus cases is now nearing 3.9 million, with the death toll over 270,000. In the U.S., we have over 1.25 million cases and have lost more than 76,600 lives. President Trump now saying that the death toll could reach over 100,000, far higher than his earlier predictions. The president's personal valet in the West Wing testing positive for the coronavirus. And just this morning, an aide to Vice President Mike Pence has also tested positive for the virus. Just how well is the president being protected? While cities like New York are seeing hope after a drop in cases, others are becoming new hotspots for the virus, including Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. And just where did the federal aid go? An investigation by the New York Times reveals that the SBA, the Small Business Administration, allowed many of the earliest grants to go to parts of the country not even affected by the virus: Iowa, Nebraska, and North Dakota, all red states. But is the president now trying to downplay the emergency, causing alarm this week after saying that the White House Coronavirus Task Force will be winding down? Vice President Mike Pence suggesting it could be disbanded in just weeks. But after a lot of criticism, Trump did an about-face, saying the task force would continue indefinitely while focusing on the reopening of the country. And more than half of the states have reopened in some form this week. But there's new reporting that more than half the states reopening do not meet White House guidelines. And the Capitol rocked by a political bombshell, that the Justice Department has dropped charges against the president's first national security advisor, Michael Flynn, despite the fact he admitted his guilt twice. And there's other news captivating the nation. The outcry for justice is growing after video was released Tuesday showing the killing of a 25-year-old black man by two armed white men in South Georgia. Kylie Miller has more details on this developing story.
Justice! What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Justice!
Today would have been Ahmaud Arbery's 26th birthday. Just last night, Travis and Gregory McMichael, the two men connected to his killing, were arrested and charged with murder and aggravated assault. According to a press release from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Travis shot and killed Arbery after he and his father Gregory confronted Arbery while he was out for his morning jog on February 23rd. The case is now with its third prosecutor, after the first two assigned removed themselves due to a conflict of interest. Gregory McMichael is a former police officer with the county.
Justice for Ahmaud! Justice for Ahmaud! Justice for Ahmaud!
Protesters marched on Tuesday evening in the neighborhood where Arbery was killed. And big names are lending their voices to the fight as well, with politicians like Kamala Harris who tweeted that, quote, "exercising while black shouldn't be a death sentence," and athletes like LeBron James who tweeted that black Americans are, quote, "literally hunted every day, every time they step outside the comfort of their homes." Reporting from Livermore, California for Chapman News, I'm Kylie Miller.
Thanks, Kylie. Startling developments this week, as more than 64 children and teens in New York State have developed a rare syndrome thought to be related to COVID-19. Health officials telling parents to seek medical help immediately if their child shows symptoms like a high fever over several days or significant abdominal pains. With more updates on the medical world, we have Lindsay Arabian with our medical report. Lindsay?
Thank you, Jada. Health authorities in New York City this week issued an alert saying that some children have a syndrome possibly tied to COVID-19 that doctors do not fully understand. 15 children, many of whom had the virus, have been hospitalized with symptoms associated with toxic shock, including inflammation of the blood vessels and coronary arteries. Officials continue to investigate the unexplained syndrome. As of Monday, the FDA announced that companies selling coronavirus antibody tests must submit data proving accuracy. In a rush to make antibody tests available as quickly as possible, the FDA had set low standards for these tests, but now it has surfaced that most of these tests produce inaccurate responses. Also this week, top coronavirus expert Dr. Anthony Fauci, in an interview with National Geographic, confirmed that COVID-19 was not created in a lab. He says that after examining the evolution of the virus in bats, it could not have been artificially or deliberately manipulated. This is Lindsay Arabian from Whittier, California, for Chapman News. Up next, reporter Nina Hatton spoke with our medical expert Dr. Jerica Lamb about the latest updates on the coronavirus. Nina?
Thanks, Lindsay. I'm here again with our medical expert, Dr. Jerica Lamb. Thank you for being with us, and let's jump right in. Research coming out of Los Alamos National Laboratory says that the COVID-19 virus may have mutated. Can we trust this?
We know that there are claims of the strain that, there are two strains that have landed in our country. One came from Europe and one came from China. That the one that is supposedly coming from Europe is the more virulent strain that hit New York and the East Coast, and that's why there were more infection rates and also more deaths because of the different type of strain. On the other hand, the strain that hit the West Coast states, that strain is supposedly coming from Wuhan, China, and it's reported to be less virulent, but we don't know yet. So the upshot from all this hype and all of this buzz is that we know that viruses do mutate. They replicate millions of copies of itself every day. In this rapid replication rate, they are prone to having errors where there's going to be non-functional viruses produced, but also it could be a new strain being produced. So these are all speculation of what's going on with the SARS-CoV-2 virus right now. We don't have the actual evidence to say that there are two strains right now, but we think there are.
Finally, let's talk about fast-tracking the vaccine. Where are we in the process, and can we trust it?
What we realize is that this is not really new in terms of fast-tracking vaccines. So I did a little research into this process, and vaccines in the past, the chickenpox, for example, and flu-mist vaccines, the flu vaccine, originally took 28 years because, we wanted to be safe, and also we didn't have all the technology as well as perhaps many competing pharmaceutical companies jumping on board to create a vaccine, to 15 years for the HPV vaccine to be approved. And then the vaccine against mumps was considered lightning fast. It only took 4 years. So we shortened the time period. In 2009, the researchers actually created vaccines against the swine flu virus, and that only took 5 months. So in essence, it is possible to actually condense the time period to produce a vaccine by using the already existing materials that many pharmaceutical companies have to create some form of vaccine that will be effective against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So we're not starting from scratch, unlike when we were way back when creating the chickenpox and the flu-mist vaccine. Right now we have all the ingredients ready. We just need to put the right ingredients together to make an effective vaccine.
Thank you. This has been Ask the Expert with Chapman News. My name is Nina Hatton.
Thanks, Nina. Face masks are quickly becoming a part of the new normal. LAX and Amtrak announcing this week that passengers will be required to wear face coverings to help slow the spread of COVID-19. While medical professionals encourage mask wearing to protect public health, there are often overlooked consequences for many in the disabled community. Our Jackie Gold looked into this and has the stories of a woman impacted and a small business trying to help.
While many of us have been struggling during the pandemic, Sue Gold has been struggling in a different way.
I basically was born deaf, but for the most part, I've gotten along in life reading lips. I can hear vowels, but I see the consonants, so I can tend to figure things out.
But having a disability never stopped Sue.
But I was always very good at reading lips. I always sat in the front of the room.
The pandemic has made it increasingly difficult for Sue. Even the transition to Zoom was challenging, with participants turning off cameras or sitting too far away for her to read their lips. With many changes, what once was so easy for her quickly became impossible.
I walk into a drugstore or a grocery store and I can't hear what they're saying. When New York State, the governor first required everybody to wear a mask, I support it 100%. But it's devastating. All of a sudden now I'm repeating that I'm deaf and hard of hearing multiple times in a day where I never thought about it before. Anybody who's disabled, they want to be able to just function, but to have to keep saying it over and over, it's difficult. You break your arm, you don't want to have to tell everybody 10 times a day. I think they're talking, but then I have to ask them, I have to tell them, I can't hear you, I need to read your lips.
When masks became mandated, Sue found herself having to highlight her disability repeatedly to those around her.
But this does make you feel like you're disabled. I've never felt like that before.
Sue found herself feeling more isolated than ever and deeply lacking communication. However, a small business near her found a solution: a clear mask. Small business owners Erin Sawyer and her husband cut a hole in the mask and replaced it with a transparent screen over the mouth.
For screen printing, when we take an image from the computer to put it onto a screen, we use transparencies. We have all these transparencies lying around, and we just made a prototype, and voila, there is a mask.
When Sue heard about these masks, she immediately ordered them for her friends and family. For her, it was a light of hope amid a dark time. But the need for clear masks doesn't end with Sue.
So I've gotten requests from hearing impaired people from all over the place. I'm sending some to Ohio, Indiana, and then I had a lady from Canada.
These transparent masks are also useful for those who work with children. Aaron and Rob have made them for daycare workers and people who work with autistic children. As children are developing, these masks can help them to learn social cues while still staying safe. Sue's story shows us all that even when you face obstacles you think you cannot overcome, there is always someone to help. During the pandemic, remember to show support to small businesses and those who need an extra helping hand. Reporting from Albany, New York, I am Jackie Gold.
Thanks, Jackie. Unemployment rates soaring, more jobless claims, retailers filing for bankruptcy, and small businesses feeling the brunt of the pandemic. We have our Jared Brosnan with the economy update. Jared?
The big news is unemployment numbers spiked, the highest since the government started keeping records back in the 30s. The president is reacting to those new numbers. On a morning call with Fox and Friends, Trump again predicted the economy would come, quote, roaring back. He said that those jobs will all be back very soon. Among the Hispanic and Latino communities, unemployment jumped to 18.9%. The highest since the 70s. The number for Black Americans is 16.7%, the highest since 2010. And women fared the worst, losing almost 12 million jobs in April. Unlike the last recession we experienced in 2007, these latest numbers reflect job losses everywhere, all across the economy. And as states begin to reopen, the Associated Press reports that Trump administration is battling the CDC, shelving a CDC report that meant to give step-by-step advice to local leaders on how to best reopen public places, including mass transit, daycare centers, and restaurants. Trump also wants to do away with some CDC restrictions like closing in religious institutions. The pandemic continues to batter the retail industry. Luxury store Neiman Marcus filed for bankruptcy yesterday, making it the second major retailer after J. Crew to do so this week. But Neiman has not announced any store closings. However, Macy's, the country's largest retail chain, plans to open hundreds of its stores in the coming weeks. A new study by the Federal Reserve finds that states enduring the large health and economic burden of the pandemic are receiving a smaller proportion of small business loans. California currently receives less than 25% of these loans. We spoke with a local Orange County businesswoman who told us about her experience applying for the loan.
Courtney Caleri owns Coco Rose Boutique, a small shop in Old Town Orange. Despite Courtney's applications for loans to keep her business open, she has not received any aid from the government.
I have not gotten 1 penny of funding.
And Courtney is not alone. Many of the small businesses around Old Town are struggling to stay afloat, several still having to pay full rent.
Contra's still paying full rent. Tiddlywinks, the toy store, is paying like something new, something borrowed. Lauren Lee, everyone's paying full rent.
Many of these shops are asking similar questions.
If I bite the bullet and take the loans and all this kind of stuff, like, is it going to pick up in a year? Is it going to pick up in 6 months? Is it going to pick up in 2 years, 5 years?
As Courtney has been forced to close her doors, she has moved to an online platform for her shop. But she is now facing a much bigger question.
I need to decide within the next 3 weeks if I'm opening my doors June 1st to keep my business, or if I'm closing my business completely as a storefront and just going strictly online.
And while loans may seem like the answer for small businesses like Courtney's, she has been weighing the option of going into debt.
I didn't have debt. I had no debt with the store. Everything was like afloat and all this kind of stuff. And now something that was basically unpredicted and forced upon us is making me go the route of putting myself in a hole and taking loans out, which is mind-blowing to me that that's my only option to survive. And I'm not even getting approved for those.
With all of these questions swirling around Courtney and many other small businesses like this, I had one question for her. Do you feel like you, as a small business, are being taken care of and seen and helped?
No, in no way, shape, or form.
Reporting from Albany, New York, I am Jackie Gold.
And 2 New England businessmen have been charged with illegally trying to procure hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal Paycheck Protection Program loans. The first fraud case in the nation involving the massive effort to rescue small businesses from the coronavirus crisis. That's your economy update this week. Reporting from Valencia, California, I'm Jared Brosnan.
If you've made a trip to the grocery store recently, you've probably found a shortage of meat, and at higher prices. That may be part of the new normal. Justin Edmondson has our story. Justin?
Thanks, Jada. The U.S. is now preparing to face a drastic shortage in meat across the country as the coronavirus outbreak continues to limit production. Several meatpacking and processing facilities have been forced to close down or run at a limited capacity. The CDC reporting that about 3% of the workers in over 100 meat factories have tested positive for COVID-19. Just this week, more than 700 employees at a Tyson meat factory in Iowa have also tested positive. These continued closures have led to a 35% drop in beef and pork production compared to this time last year. Many farmers are now destroying their inventory rather than selling at a loss. Analysts are predicting that over 7 million pigs could be euthanized during this quarter alone. Just last week, President Trump signed an executive order to keep these factories open, an effort to prevent looming shortages of varying meat products.
They're big companies, but they're now being treated fairly. They're thrilled, and that whole bottleneck is broken up.
But this action comes as meat plants have become hotspots, sickening workers across the country. This shortage has many experts predicting a potential 30% increase in meat prices for consumers. In response, companies such as Costco and Kroger have started to limit the amount of meat customers can purchase at once, and the fast food company Wendy's has run out of beef altogether. With no cure likely in the immediate future, consumers are going to have to get ready for their food costs to be potentially affected into next year. Reporting from San Mateo, California, I'm Justin Edmondson.
Thanks, Justin. As more states begin to partially reopen this week, our reporters take a closer look at its national and state level impact. We have Jackie Gold and Michael Karabit with our political report. Jackie?
The government has dropped its prosecution of President Trump's ex-National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, despite the fact that he's already pled guilty twice. Flynn pleaded guilty to lying to FBI agents about a conversation with a Russian diplomat in 2016. Trump and his allies have lobbied hard to drop those charges, and Attorney General Barr's decision to drop charges further weakens the special counsel's report on the presidential election and Russian involvement. There was already talk that Trump would pardon Flynn. And President Trump continues to push for plans to reopen the country. More than 40 states will at least be partly reopened by this weekend. Some governors like New York's Andrew Cuomo are still pleading for states to remain closed.
The faster we reopen, the lower the economic cost, but the higher the human cost, because the more lives lost. That, my friends, is the decision we are really making.
But a lot of that decision-making is being done by individuals, often ignoring calls to reopen. A new survey from the Washington Post using cell phone data finds that in big states, big cities, people are still staying in. New York, Detroit, Los Angeles, Miami, and Boston all have 90% to 95% people at home. The least number staying in are the states least affected, Alaska and South Dakota. As we reported earlier, as a part of the president's push to reopen, he stated on Tuesday that the coronavirus task force would be dissolved.
I think that as far as the task force, Mike Pence and the task force have done a great job, but we're now looking at a little bit of a different form, and that form is safety and opening, and we'll have a different group probably set up for that.
The next day, President Trump that he is not dissolving the coronavirus task force. Rather, he is evolving it to focus on mitigating economic fallout. The president also said that the task force will continue indefinitely.
I thought we could wind it down sooner. I had no idea how popular the task force is until actually yesterday. When I started talking about winding it down, I'd get calls from very respected people saying, I think it would be better to keep it going. It's done such a good job. It's a respected task force.
And the president also vetoed the Iran War Powers Declaration on Wednesday, calling it an insult. The resolution would have required his administration to seek clearance from Congress to use military force against Iran. The introduction of the bill followed Trump's decision to order a strike that killed an Iranian commander in January. The president said the resolution was based on misunderstandings of facts and law. Earlier this week, the president visited a mask plant without wearing a mask. As cameras followed the president, he is seen talking to employees without a face covering. The president later insisted that he was wearing a face protection behind the scenes. As far as the 2020 election goes, Joe Biden still holds the lead over Trump, and that lead has grown despite the recent sexual assault allegations against the former vice president. President Trump's approval rating now stands at 43%. I am Jackie Gold with your national political update. Now to Michael Korabit with state-level politics. Michael?
As more states reopen to a post-pandemic world, many of them are facing new political issues. While Florida is seeing decreases in the number of COVID-19 cases and an increase in testing, the burden is now on the state's economy. Since March, more than 1.8 million Florida residents have filed for unemployment, but less than one-third of applicants have received any assistance. At the same time, hundreds of residents of the Florida Panhandle are evacuating their homes as a result of wildfires that have been raging on since early this week. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, has authorized funds to the state related to the cost of containing the fire. Many states, including California and New York, had criticized the federal government's apparent eagerness to help Florida over other states during the pandemic. The Trump administration has focused a lot of effort on the state going into the 2020 election. The Republican Party of Florida hopes to win the state by an even wider margin than 2016. Other states are also dealing with the repercussions of high unemployment. The Ohio Department of Job and Family Service is now asking employers to report workers who quit or refuse to work. This new system will make it harder for workers to meet the requirements to maintain unemployment benefits. And Georgia Governor Brian Kemp is now saying COVID-19 is putting stress on state medical resources despite reopening businesses last week. After a visit this week to a temporary medical pod in Albany, one of the state's most impacted cities, Kemp is changing his tone.
One of the best decisions I think we made early on was these mobile hospital sites, because they're going to be good today and tomorrow when patients start coming in here. It really is impressive how well built they are and how quick they got stood up and how they're medically ready with oxygen and everything else that needs to be done.
Meanwhile, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is expected to release a plan to reopen the city today. And California is now starting to reopen public facilities today as well. But as Sacramento continues to see quarantine protesters in full swing, Governor Gavin Newsom warns that the end of the pandemic is not yet in sight.
We'll need everybody moving together in this. This is, again, not a red state issue, not a blue state issue. It's tiring saying that. It's not a red county issue, a blue county issue. That's tiring. It's about human beings that need government at a time of great need and great stress, more than they ever have in our lifetimes.
From Long Beach, California, I'm Michael Korabit.
Thanks, Michael. It's another beautiful sunny day here in Los Angeles, and the California summer is heating up. With all the sunshine, many are wondering when the state's beaches and parks will be open to enjoy. With our California update, we have Rudy Juarez Pinedo. Rudy?
California, it's been a long time coming. 50-plus days in sheltering in place, 4 million unemployment claims filed, and more than 2,500 deaths statewide. We're nowhere near the end of this pandemic, but beginning today, Californians enter Stage 2 of the governor's 4-phase plan. Now, it's different county by county, but it's a relief for many as shelter-in-place restrictions loosen. Here's what it all means. Small retail like bookstores, music stores, toy stores, florists, sporting goods stores, and clothing stores can reopen, but for curbside pickup only. That means no customers can enter inside. Manufacturers and suppliers are also allowed to reopen. Higher-risk businesses like hair salons, gyms, car washes, work offices, and dining and restaurants are also part of Phase 2, but won't open until weeks to come. Now, keep in mind, social distancing and face coverings are still strictly enforced. Businesses must train employees to limit the spread of COVID-19 and sanitize the store frequently. Phase 2 also allows counties to move faster than the state if their healthcare systems can handle a potential surge. But counties like Modoc, Sutter, and Yuba have already moved ahead with reopening, violating the state's orders. And with populations less than 100,000, they argue they're less affected by COVID-19 than other higher populated areas like SoCal or the Bay Area. But counties like LA and San Francisco say they are cautious about entering Phase 2. LA County remains California's COVID-19 hotspot, with more than 1,400 deaths and 29,500 cases, 800 new cases reported on Thursday alone. And despite LA Mayor Eric Garcetti saying the city won't open in time for the statewide shift into Phase 2, earlier this week he announced low-risk businesses are now allowed to open today, even going so far as to reopen trails and parks. And days after Newsom ordered all OC beaches to close, causing lawsuits and massive protests, state officials announced the reopening of the OC coastline. With limits, though. No sunbathing, relaxing, or gathering is allowed. Only active recreational activities such as surfing, swimming, or going for a jog. From Whittier, California, this is Rudy Juarez Pinedo for Chapman News.
Thanks, Rudy. With finals fast approaching and the school year coming to a close, we have Nina Hatton with all your Chapman updates.
Thanks, Jada. While a commencement date is still up in the air, President Strupa and Dean Price are honoring seniors with a Zoom toast on May 22nd. But don't worry, seniors, this is not replacing the actual commencement ceremony, which, according to Dean Price, will not be before September 1st to comply with state guidelines. Yesterday, Dean Gaffney announced an update to Chapman's Title IX policy to meet the Department of Education's new regulations on investigating and judging sexual misconduct cases. She will keep us updated on when those changes will be implemented. This week at the Global Citizens Wall will feature questions about Governor Gavin Newsom's decision to close beaches. So be sure to check it out and send in your responses to @LifeCU on Instagram. Another big event for students is the Student Scholar Symposium, which was held online Tuesday and Wednesday. We have sociology major Corinne Tam to talk about how she felt about the virtual symposium.
I didn't like it. I think I would have much preferred seeing people's faces because already I think in oral presentations it's less of a dialogue and more of like you're presenting, so you're like talking at people, and so even just like getting to see them and their facial expressions, that's like the smallest kind of engagement that you can get. And when we did it online, I couldn't get any of that. I felt like I was talking to my computer screen.
And Chapman continues to give back to the Orange community. Engineering students have used 3D technology to donate over 3,000 face shields to medical workers. The Counseling Center is giving free services to first responders and frontline workers. Not to mention, the Community Math Partnership Program launched Math at Play, a YouTube channel dedicated to teaching pre-K through 8th grade math. This has been Nina Hatton reporting from OC for Chapman News.
Thanks, Nina. And now we take a closer look at what's happening far from home. We have Carissa Davis with our international report. Carissa?
As the world is assessing the current threat of the pandemic, some countries are seeing improvements while others are still struggling to contain the virus. For the fourth time, Spain has extended its national lockdown, this time until May 24th. But today, Lebanon starts allowing prayer and mass to be held in mosques again, as long as attendance is capped at 30% of maximum capacity. Moscow will begin to reopen construction and factories on May 12th as a part of Phase 1 of easing lockdown restrictions. And Belgium is easing social gathering restrictions, now allowing people to gather in groups of 4 inside the home. Germany is keeping social distancing practices in place through June. However, they plan to resume soccer at the end of May. As of Wednesday, over 58,000 children have returned to school in Wuhan, China. New safety measures are also being put in place at Heathrow Airport in London. These include UV sanitation, facial thermal recognition, and contactless security procedures. If the trials are successful, this could shape the future of travel. But as scientists are looking forward to the future, they are also discovering more about the early stages of the virus. Coronavirus may have made an appearance in France earlier than first thought. A pneumonia sample from a patient in December now came back as positive for COVID-19. This is a month before the virus was initially confirmed in Europe, and the head scientist in the UK has stepped down after breaking the social distancing rules he set in place. But some good news, Japanese artist Takashi Murakami has partnered with streetwear brand Supreme to raise over $1 million to help people facing homelessness during the pandemic. And 11-year-old Georgia Bola from Nebraska took her pony named Peanut to local nursing homes. Georgia and Peanut walked window to window to pay the residents a visit while they are isolated. Reporting from Anaheim Hills, California for Chapman News, I'm Carissa Davis.
Thanks, Carissa. With life here on Earth a little uncertain, some of us might wish we were in outer space. Coming in from a galaxy far, far away, we have Jules Rector with the latest in quarantainment. Jules?
I really thought this year couldn't get any weirder. But to be honest, nothing can really surprise me anymore. Which is why when I heard that Tom Cruise is going to film a movie from the International Space Station, I wasn't really surprised. And I'm not kidding, NASA literally confirmed it. SpaceX is rumored to be in on the project as well, and speaking of Mr. SpaceX himself, Elon Musk and his musician girlfriend Grimes welcomed their new baby on Tuesday, and the internet is going crazy over the name they chose. Despite the unique spelling, Grimes responded to an Instagram post saying the proper way to pronounce their son's name is XAI. You know, 2020 is also starting to feel like 2008 all over again. I'm living in my parents' house, watching old Disney Channel shows, there's been a new Twilight book announcement, and another Hunger Games book coming out this month. Yep, it seems these famous authors are just as bored as the rest of us, giving them that creative spark to finish those books they started way back when. Twilight author Stephanie Meyer is planning to publish a new addition to the Twilight series, and if you're hashtag Team Edward, you'll love this one, because in the new novel, Midnight Sun, he gets a story from his point of view. And if you're more of a Hunger Games fan, the trilogy author Suzanne Collins has got you covered with the prequel book titled The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes coming out May 19th. If you're too lazy to read the books, no worries, because on Tuesday, Lionsgate announced a prequel movie is in the works as well. And our grandparents are also getting a little blast from the past, as the new Friday night activity might be drive-in movies. Tribeca Enterprises, IMAX, and AT&T are partnering to launch Tribeca Drive-In coming June 25th. The drive-in will play an assortment of films, including new releases, music, and sporting events, which could be a great alternative for those of us who are missing those large crowds. For those of you that are sick of being home, you could trade your couch for the seats of your car. That was your quarantainment this week. Reporting from Jensen Beach, Florida, I'm Jules Rector.
Thanks, Jules. And some sobering news from one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world. Kim Becker has the story.
Thanks, Jada. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the Walt Disney Company has suffered a $1 billion loss of profit from park operations, and overall profits are down by 91% in the most recent quarter. A real shock for one of the biggest entertainment companies in the United States. Disney employees have seen the worst of it all, with huge layoffs and pay cuts at ABC, Fox, and ESPN, and over 100,000 theme park cast members that have been laid off since last month. Former Disney CEO Bob Iger has returned to the company without pay to help save it. But there may be a glimmer of hope with the announcement that Disney World in Orlando will begin a phased opening of Disney Springs on the 20th. The Orlando hotels and parks will still remain closed. This comes days after Disney Parks Chief Medical Officer Dr. Pam Heimel announced the phased reopening of Shanghai Disneyland. The grand reopening will begin May 11th at 30% capacity, with some important safety considerations in mind, like social distancing, more sanitizing stations, and temperature checks. Despite this phased reopening, Disney's newly appointed CEO Bob Chapek, who has taken a 50% salary cut, said there are no projections as to when the other parks or studios will begin operations again. I used to skate for Disney on Ice, so I asked one of my former coworkers, Brian Santiago, what his thoughts were on Disney's closures. But with arenas being in one of the last phases of reopening, he doesn't know what to expect.
You can't have the intimate experience that you want to get at Disney on Ice or with other Disney-related products or anything in the entertainment industry, because that's such a scary thing right now for people to even get within 6 feet of each other. And as an entertainer, it'd be so difficult to have to go out into an arena or a theater and not be able to perform to a full house.
Like most cast members, he just wishes to bring that Disney magic back to the ice and do what he knows best.
I would love nothing more than to see all of these shows that we've been putting on for families for years and years and years just come back and resume as normal. And to see all the smiling faces and to see all the kids excited to see their favorite characters again, and so close in person, like as it is with Disney on Ice. But the reality is, at this time, like we can't bank on that happening in the near future, which is really unfortunate because I would love nothing more than to get back to my normal job, a job that I worked so hard for.
Walt Disney World's new attractions and experiences are still on track to open for their highly anticipated grand 50th anniversary next year, but with 30% of people saying they wouldn't want to visit the park until a vaccine is available. So far, other popular theme parks like Universal, Knott's Berry Farm, and SeaWorld have not released reopening dates, but it is assumed that they will follow Disney's lead. It all started with a mouse, but let's hope it doesn't all end with a virus. Reporting from Orange County, I'm Kim Becker.
Thanks, Kim. And some major changes coming to the world of sports as coaches and players work to find a way to prepare for the upcoming season. We have Anna Montemore with the latest updates. Anna?
Athletes everywhere are facing new circumstances, forcing them to get creative with ways to work out from home. But how long can college athletes continue to train in quarantine? Zoom has proved to be a promising option for remote practices. The NCAA has reevaluated guidelines and granted coach-led physical activity via Zoom for teams currently in off-season. Assistant coach of the Chapman women's soccer team, Josh Johnson, spoke to me about how his team has been adjusting to the off-season Zoom practices.
It was kind of tedious just because we needed to find different kind of platforms and everything so that we can be interactive with you guys with tactics and make it as productive as possible.
The women's soccer coaches are leading the team in not only physical workouts, but also guiding them through tactics and team bonding via Zoom. And since most athletes don't have a full soccer field and weight room in their backyard, the coaches have had to make some serious adjustments to the workouts that they would have done normally at school.
Adjust our normal plan for physical fitness since there wasn't going to be any weightlifting involved. It was all going to be body weight stuff. So we had to change both, obviously, programs with that and just see how we were going to make you guys interact with each other versus just having the coaches run everything. There was kind of a challenge with both of those things.
Players are also doing their best to stay positive. Freshman Chapman women's soccer player Danny Birch told me how she's making the most of the situation.
Zoom is better than nothing because we're staying active, we're staying connected, and we're still getting the sense of being a team.
But one huge question remains. Will there even be a 2020 fall season? The NCAA has not made any statements on the future, but all teams are still training in hopes that they will get to compete next school year. And even though spring seasons were canceled, Chapman Athletics still held its awards show last night via Facebook Live. Women's soccer player Faith Holloway and football player Ryan Moles were recognized for their work in the classroom by being named Scholar Athletes of the Year. 2 athletes were also recognized for their leadership on the field, with Joe Jimenez of the baseball team winning the Don Perkins Award and Leah Donnelly from the women's lacrosse team winning the Jack Duddy Award. For now, it comes down to staying home and staying healthy, working out in the space that you do have, and hoping for a 2020 fall season. For Chapman News from Seattle, Washington, I'm Anna Montemore.
Thanks, Anna. We like to end our show every week with a spotlight on a hero. With our weekly feature, Making a Difference, we have Ella Martin with some stories of hope and celebration. Ella?
Thanks, Jada. With millions of people out of work in this country, many families are struggling with the costly totals of rent and groceries each month, and for some, the government assistance just isn't enough. Our hero of the week is someone who chose to keep their name anonymous. However, this act of heroism speaks for itself. When this Santa Rosa landlord received their $3,400 stimulus check for their family, they decided to use the check to pay off some of the rent for 13 of their tenants. Although this was the money that their family could use, they knew that their tenants needed it more. Then, the landlord more than doubled the money, making it $7,000 to give to the people he called his second family.
My wife and I, we spent hours talking about it and feeling bad that it wasn't enough and that we couldn't do more. I just feel like we're all in this together.
One of their tenants, Cynthia Wissett, has been renting from this landlord for many years. She says that money is tight and she is concerned about whether her family has enough to eat. When her landlord told her to subtract $500 from her rent, she said she wasn't that surprised because he is the greatest landlord she has ever had. And people are looking to a 1,000-year-old tree in Japan for resilience during COVID-19. This waterfall cherry tree in Miharu, Fukushima, has survived many trying times, including Japan's horrific earthquake and tsunami in 2011. Sidafumi Hirata, the caretaker of heritage in the tree's town, says, "This tree has lived so long, and the longer you live, the more bad events you see. So she will see more bad things, but she'll also see good." With social distance happening, less people can go and visit the tree, but the fact that it's still there, standing tall and proud, shows the power of resilience. Hirata says he will continue looking after the tree, making sure it stands another 1,000 years and continues to inspire people to stand tall in these trying times. From my home in Portland, Oregon, for Chapman News, I'm Ella Martine.
Thanks, Ella, for those incredible stories and the reminder to stay strong during these tough times. That's it for our Chapman News podcast today. Make sure to practice social distancing, wash your hands regularly, and most importantly, stay home and keep safe. We'll get through this together. We'll be back next week with another update on this ongoing crisis on Chapman News, the podcast. Until then, be sure to check out our social media at Chapman News on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Jada Sandhu from Orange, California for Chapman News. Stay safe and stay healthy.